Welcome. Today we have Holly Highfield with us to discuss wellness as a pathway to not just surviving, but thriving. Holly is a fitness professional and a wellness and personal care entrepreneur. Holly, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Larry. I'm glad to be here.
Great, good. Well, Holly, as we all know, the all-consuming topic for the past year or more has been the COVID pandemic. How have you seen the COVID pandemic impact people's perspectives on their health and wellness?
It's a great question, and honestly, it's almost a little sad, right? Because I think a lot of people felt fear. The pandemic brought on a lot of fear where the average person had a greater concern, not just for their own health, but for their friends and family's health too. And that being said, the pandemic kind of forced a lot of people to reevaluate, right, their physical and their mental well-being, and really kind of dive into some of the things that they could be doing better so that they could live a healthier, more happier life, and really just look at what they had control over, since the pandemic made a lot of people, I think, feel out of control.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. So as we continue to hear stories about how the pandemic has disrupted our normal activities, how have people adapted their activities and eating habits during the pandemic?
Yeah, again, another great question. And I think, again, the bottom line is this pandemic has gone on a lot longer than a lot of us ever anticipated. And so a lot of our physical activity, as well as our eating habits, like you said, have been completely disrupted. Now, what I love is that a lot of people actually saw this as that opportunity that I talked about to reevaluate what it was that they were already doing. And they made changes. They pivoted, they adapted. Now, maybe it was out of necessity, right? Because the restaurants were closed, the drive-thrus weren't up and running. But what I noticed as a health professional and a certified nutritionist is that the top three trends during this time period has been a focus on boosting one's immune system in an effort to avoid getting sick. Also, mental health and self-care. That was a really big one that I also noticed as a trend perspective. And then also virtual fitness. So gyms, personal trainers, instructors, again, everything got shut down. So they were forced to pivot and move to things like Zoom as a way to encourage and inspire others to still want to stay active and not lose all that work during lockdown. I mean, folks were literally converting, and I've seen it. I know some friends who have done it, converting their garages and offices to their little workout spaces. They bought a yoga ball and they bought a mat, or they got a couple hand weights. They were doing what they needed to do in order to accommodate and adjust. The virtual fitness was just one of them. The cooking, that was a big one. A lot of folks found themselves cooking more meals more often than they were ever used to, because they were so used to always being on the go, whether if it was work or running to kids' sporting events. They were having to reevaluate. And some people actually embraced it and they started taking cooking classes online, and they were learning new ways to introduce different foods and really just have a better understanding of the very foods that they were putting into our body to fuel them. Because then they started to realize that the foods that I'm eating are actually impacting my energy levels, my ability to be able to get a good night's sleep, and just my overall mental well-being and status too.
Great. It's really inspiring to hear about how creative people have been to adapt during the pandemic. And as you say, it started out with fear, but they came back with a roar on the adapting. And now with the rollout of the vaccine and people beginning to emerge from the quarantine and their remote work, what are some of the tips and tricks that you would offer that are likely to continue and help us post-pandemic?
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you asked this question as well, because so many people are excited. We're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're feeling that glimmer of hope again, that we're going to be able to get back into the swing of things or get back into our normal routines. But my biggest trick for you, or thing to think about, is I want you to look back at the habits that you formed while during lockdown. And I want you to physically write them down. Write down the good and the bad habits. For some people, they were actually snacking more than they normally would, and maybe they gained a couple pounds. For other people, maybe they reevaluated and their health is even better now than it was before the pandemic. But what I would encourage you again to do is evaluate those habits. Don't go back to the habits that weren't serving you. All right. So instead of reverting back to going through the drive-through, plan out your meals for your dinner, have everything ready to go, make larger portions, pre-plan your snacks so that you can take them to work. And when you find yourself burning that midnight oil as you're getting back into the grind, maybe going back into the office and at work, maybe you're missing that spin class or not being able to get to the gym, don't make an excuse. Don't throw in the towel. Just download one of the many free workout apps that are actually available on your phone and take 15 minutes in order to get your heart rate up. Go up and down your stairs in your house, take a couple laps around the neighborhood. Just again, focus on the habits that are going to serve you and your health in the long run overall, because you're going to feel better for it. So
Great.
those would be my tips for that.
Good. Holly, thank you. As you were saying, it's like take an inventory and really kind of mindfully create a new normal for yourself coming out of the pandemic rather than racing back to the old normal, et cetera. Let's take the learnings and the good things that we learned during the pandemic and let's have an impact on them. So thank you. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That was an honor for you to ask, and I'm glad to be here and share what it is that I can to help people live a happier, healthier lifestyle.
Great. Thank you. So in closing, thank you for joining us today. If you have additional questions for Holly, please see the links in her bio.